topic of today are the men who sing up high. And I will be talking first of all about the precedents of the singers that sing up high today, which are the castrati, and then I will be talking about the countertenors of today. Now a castrati, well actually a castrato, singular, was a man who had had his testes removed when he was about 5 to 7 years of age. So if you want to cross your legs now, that's good. I should use the word assuage at this time, but I don't know quite how to use it. The process of castration was actually considered kind of a mutilation, but it was tolerated because the Pope had outlawed women singing in the church. And so the Pope had to have his sopranos. And between 1720 and 1730, 4,000 castratos were made a year in Italy. Now, they started out at around age 8 singing, and they would train for 8 to 10 hours a day. And so by the time that they were a mature singer, they would have had, 10, 12 years of training under their belt. So they were incredibly well trained. Now, the interesting thing about castrati is they had the vocal cords of a little boy. But their bones, because they didn't have the hormones, because they lacked the testes, kept growing. Regular men will stop growing at a certain point. Well, they keep growing, so they were basketball player size. Everybody else was 5'7", 5'8" back then, so they were towering. And their chests didn't stop growing, so they had these enormous chests. Now, the most famous of all of the castrati was Farinelli, who you should be able to see there, right there. And he was 6'3", which was, Dan's height was really tall back in the 1730s. And he was extraordinary, not only for the beauty of his voice, but for the ability to sing a phrase for 1 minute without catching his breath. I mean, can you imagine? And he had incredible dexterity. A lot of the music for castrati that are sung by the countertenors today were written for Farinelli. He was so famous, and women loved him too. The women loved him. They were mad, 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 mad. Now, they say that the castrati voice was different than a woman's voice. It was much more like a boy soprano, but much, much, much bigger because, they were huge. And they also had this sort of sour but sweet quality to it. It's very unique. We only have one castrati we can actually hear. It was recorded in 1910 in the Vatican. It was the last to sing in the Vatican. Now, the castrati went out of fashion when women started being able to sing again. And the women are glad about that. Now, the countertenors are the men who sing in what is called the falsetto register. Does everybody know what falsetto is? And there's always been men singing that way. Up until the mid to 1925, 1980, somewhere in there, most of the countertenors would sing in almost a boy soprano type of sound. Very pure, no vibrato. A lot of English singers. Well, all of a sudden, now lately, especially in the last 10 years, there's been an explosion of countertenors. And countertenors now sound remarkably like women. They've changed the way they produce the sound. And it's amazing what they're doing. And I would say that nowadays, actually the hottest market in opera are the countertenors because A, most of them are really good looking. That doesn't hurt. And they have these beautiful voices, and as you can see when I play these, they're very expressive. Now the first countertenor is one I'm just going to say it. If there was a tiger beat or countertenors, I would have it and have his pictures on the wall. Really cute. David Hansen. He's allegedly heterosexual and married, but there's always hope. And when he was in middle school, his teacher told him that he could be a countertenor. He had the potential. And he said, "Say what?" He didn't know what he was talking about. But fortunately, he had very astute parents who were musically savvy. And they took him to a Handel opera. And Handel wrote a lot of operas for the Castrati originally, and now countertenors. And there were 3 countertenors. And he was smitten with the art. In fact, he has been quoted as saying that ever since his voice broke when he was a teenager, he's never sung in his baritone voice. He's always sung as a countertenor the whole time. Even with a pop song, his natural way of singing is with the countertenor voice. The other thing that's unusual about David Hansen is that very few countertenors can sing quite as high as women. But he can sing up to high C, which is pretty amazing. So I'm going to play for you a little clip of David Hansen. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. The only difference between him and Farinelli is Farinelli could have done that all in one breath. Now, the other countertenor I'm playing for you today is Phillippe Jaroussky, and he's from France, and he is the #1 classical music star of France. He is a superstar, and I would say he's one of the great superstars in the opera world today, especially France. The thing that's really unusual is in France, not only are all of his concerts sold out, but they're sold out to young women mostly. Women in their 20s, 30s. It's a young crowd. Most opera crowds are, old queens like me. But it's a young crowd, and he has got this beautiful voice. And he has a wonderful way of involving his whole body in the way that he sings. You'll watch this, and plus he's a very handsome man. And it doesn't necessarily sound like a woman's voice. He definitely is a little bit more of a boy. And he has quoted as saying, "I do not sit out to imitate women. It's more like trying to reclaim the boy soprano of the past." So, I will play you now Phillippe Jaroussky. Right, this is one of the big arias that was written for Farinelli. truly sells it. You know what I'm saying? He really sells it. He puts everything into it. And that's one of the things that has made him a superstar. Friends, I'm really happy to have introduced, what I'm guessing is probably completely new territory for many of you, especially looking at Jeff's face. So, this is a remarkable group of people, incredible talents. And one of the things I will tell you is that it's a lot harder for men in the falsetto to pronounce words as easily, to move the voice around as flexibly as a woman can, and yet these men have mastered the art of doing it. So it's quite a feat. And I encourage you to maybe check that out. Thank you very much.